The stars shimmered cold and distant as the USS Pathfinder drifted into the Veridani system, its sleek hull a stark contrast to the hulking alien dreadnoughts that flanked it. Captain Nathaniel Ward sat in his command chair, shoulders squared, his sharp eyes scanning the holographic display that dominated the bridge. Around him, the hum of the ship's systems mingled with the murmurs of his crew, a calm surface masking the tension that buzzed like a live wire. Concordant ships are holding position, reported Lieutenant Jack Monroe, his fingers dancing over the navigation console. The ex-Marine had the controlled energy of a man always ready to leap into action, his tone light but edged with the same unease everyone felt. "I'm guessing they're waiting to see if we start groveling." Ward allowed a faint smile. "Let them wait. We're here for diplomacy, not submission." Commander Ethan Parker, standing by a flickering control panel, let out a dry chuckle. "Diplomacy's a hard sell when their fleet could squash us like a bug." "No offense, sir." "None taken," Ward replied, his tone measured. "But they'll have to learn what humans bring to the table. We're not here to impress them with numbers." Before anyone could respond, the holographic display flickered to life. A towering alien figure materialized, its crystalline skin refracting light like shards of a broken mirror. The Concordant envoy's voice was a cascade of resonant tones, translated by the ship's AI into crisp English. "Humans," it began, each word laced with disdain. "We expected a fleet. Instead, you send this." It gestured vaguely, as if the Pathfinder wasn't worth its attention. "Is this arrogance or foolishness?" Ward rose slowly, his movements deliberate. "This is trust," he said evenly. "Trust that our single ship can prove humanity's worth without a show of overwhelming force. We prefer actions to speak for us." The envoy's crystalline form shifted, its light dimming momentarily. "Words are cheap. The Crawl pirates are not. If they descend upon you, we will not intervene." Before Ward could respond, an alarm blared across the bridge. Monroe's hands flew to his console and his voice sharpened. "Multiple bogies inbound. Confirmed Crawl signatures, fast and heavily armed." Parker muttered a curse under his breath. "Great. First impressions just keep getting better." Ward turned to his crew, his voice calm despite the rising tension. "Battle stations. Let's show them what one ship can do." The Pathfinder leapt into motion. Monroe's hands gripped the controls, guiding the ship into evasive maneuvers as plasma bolts streaked through the void. On screen, the Crawl vessels were jagged constructs of blackened metal, bristling with weaponry and malice. Their attack was relentless, forcing the Pathfinder to weave and dart like a cornered animal. "Shields holding at 60%, Parker reported, his voice tight as he worked furiously to reroute power. "But they won't last long if we keep taking direct hits." "Understood," Ward said. "Monroe, take us closer to the asteroid field. Use the terrain." "Thought you'd never ask," Monroe replied, a grin breaking through his tension. The Pathfinder banked hard, plunging into the dense cluster of rocks. The Crawl followed, their larger ship struggling to navigate the chaotic field. As the ship jolted from a near miss, Dr. Lucas Ramirez steadied himself against the console, his usual curiosity momentarily eclipsed by concern. "Captain, their firepower is overwhelming. What's the plan?" Ward's reply was resolute. "We make it overwhelming for them, too." "Parker, can we overload the aft deflector array?" Parker's head snapped up, his expression incredulous. "Overload? It'll fry the system. Maybe the whole ship. Can you do it?" Ward pressed. "Of course I can," Parker shot back, already moving to the nearest access panel. "Doesn't mean it's sane." "Good," Ward said. "Monroe, line us up. Grady, get ready to deploy countermeasures. Ramirez, monitor for any biological signatures. They might try boarding." Sergeant Thomas Grady, the ship's security lead, nodded from his station. His voice was gruff but steady. "Let them try. I've got a welcoming committee ready." As Parker worked, sparks flew from the console and the lights on the bridge flickered. "Almost there," he grunted. "If this doesn't work, we're all getting a front row seat to a supernova. Better make it a good show then," Monroe quipped, his hands steady on the controls despite the relentless pursuit. "Lining up now." The Pathfinder lurched as another plasma bolt glanced off its hull. The shield indicator dropped to 30%, and warning lights flared across the bridge. "Parker?" Ward's voice cut through the chaos. "Done," Parker shouted, slamming the panel shut. Aft deflector overloaded and ready. Ward gave a sharp nod. "Monroe, bring us about." "Grady, deploy countermeasures on my mark." The Pathfinder swung around, facing its pursuers head-on. The Kraul ships hesitated, their commanders momentarily caught off guard by the audacity of the maneuver. "Now," Ward commanded. Grady launched a salvo of decoys, scattering heat signatures and sensor disruptors. Simultaneously, Parker activated the overloaded deflector array, releasing a blinding burst of energy that cascaded through the asteroid field. The nearest Kraul ships reeled, their systems shorting out as the electromagnetic waves surged through them. Monroe seized the opportunity, threading the Pathfinder through a narrow gap in the rocks. Behind them, two Kraul ships collided in the confusion, their hulls crumpling in a fiery explosion. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Ward raised a hand, silencing them. "Status?" "Shields at 15%, Parker reported, wiping sweat from his brow. "Hull integrity holding, but we can't take another hit like that." "The Kraul are retreating," Ramirez added, relief evident in his voice. "For now." Ward exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. He turned to the holographic display, where the Concordant envoy's crystalline form reappeared. Its light shimmered, less harsh than before. "You survived," it said, its tone tinged with surprise. "Against the Kraul, no less. Perhaps humans are not as foolish as they seem. We prefer resourceful," Ward replied. "And we're just getting started." The envoy inclined its head, a gesture that might have been respect. "Then let us see if your actions continue to speak louder than your words." As the hologram faded, Ward looked to his crew. Their faces reflected exhaustion, but also determination. They had survived their first test, but the road ahead promised to be even more perilous. "Good work, everyone," he said. "Let's get patched up. We've got a lot more to prove." The Pathfinder powered down its weapons, its lights dimming as it slipped into the shadow of the asteroids. For now, the void was quiet, but the crew knew it wouldn't last. The USS Pathfinder docked at the edge of the Concordant mining colony, a patchwork sprawl of metal platforms and humming machinery suspended above a barren, cratered moon. Alien workers moved in synchronized chaos, their multi-limb forms operating drills, transporters, and shielded cargo skiffs. The crew of the Pathfinder stood on the observation deck, their expressions a mix of fascination and unease. "Quite the operation," muttered Commander Ethan Parker, his eyes following a towering alien loader hauling a chunk of ore. "I'd kill for half that efficiency back on Earth." "Focus, Parker," Captain Nathaniel Ward said, his tone even but firm. "We're here to prove our worth, not admire the view." The docking hatches opened, and an escort of Concordant soldiers, their armor gleaming with intricate fractal patterns, stepped aboard. At their head stood Overseer Takor, a member of the crystalline species that dominated the Concordant. His angular form caught the light in brilliant flashes as he scanned the humans with an inscrutable gaze. "You are late," Takor said, his voice resonating like struck chimes. "The Kraul's raids grow bolder. If you cannot aid us, your presence here is a liability." Captain Ward stepped forward, meeting Takor's piercing gaze without flinching. "We're here to help fortify your defenses, Overseer. Give us a chance to show you what we can do." Takor's silence lingered, heavy as stone. Finally, he gestured for the humans to follow. "We shall see if your actions are as bold as your words." The crew split into their assigned roles. Commander Parker, accompanied by a team of concordant engineers, inspected the colony's energy systems, his sharp mind already devising ways to improve the failing shield grid. Dr. Lucas Ramirez, with Sergeant Thomas Grady shadowing him, ventured into the biodomes to study the moon's harsh ecosystem and identify potential resources for survival. Lieutenant Jack Monroe remained aboard the Pathfinder, ready to provide aerial support if the crawl attacked again. "Your energy shields are bleeding power like a sieve," Parker said, crouching beside an exposed conduit that emitted faint sparks. "This isn't going to hold up against another raid. The technology is superior to yours," a concordant engineer snapped, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Your crude observations are unnecessary." Parker grinned unfazed. "Superior doesn't mean perfect. Let me show you a trick." He retrieved a toolkit from his belt, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he rerouted power through a bypass circuit. The conduit flared briefly before stabilizing, its output increasing by 20%. The concordant engineer blinked, their crystalline form flickering in what might have been surprise. "Crude," Parker said, standing, "but effective. Let's keep moving." Elsewhere, Ramirez studied the biodome's contents, his scientific curiosity rekindled despite the tension. The domes house a variety of alien flora, their bioluminescent leaves casting an eerie glow over the soil. "Most of this stuff's toxic," he muttered, scanning a sample with his portable analyzer. "But there's potential here. If we can extract the right compounds." "Stick to the lab talk," Grady grumbled, his rifle slung across his chest as he watched the dome's perimeter. "I'll keep an eye out for anything with teeth." Ramirez smirked. "You'd be amazed how many things without teeth are just as deadly." Their banter was cut short by the approach of a concordant biologist, their fluid, serpentine form gliding silently. The alien held out a sample of a pulsating, amber-like substance. "Symbiote extract," the biologist explained, their voice a whispering chorus. "Our workers use it to survive the moon's atmosphere. It may prove useful to your kind." Ramirez accepted the sample, his mind racing. "If this works, it could buy us weeks, maybe months of stability." Grady nodded, his posture relaxing slightly. "Let's hope it doesn't bite us back." As the hours passed, the crew's efforts began to coalesce. Parker's jury-rigged modifications stabilized the colony's defenses, and Ramirez's work in the biodomes identified a reliable method to enhance the humans' adaptability. Even Monroe's vigilance paid off when he spotted an incoming crawl scout ship, allowing the colony to repel it before it could report back. Yet tension simmered. In the command center, Ward and Takor faced off again, their philosophical differences laid bare. "Your methods are reckless," Takor said, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "You gamble with what you cannot afford to lose, and you paralyze yourselves with caution," Ward countered. "The Crawl aren't waiting for perfection. They'll strike the moment they see an opening." The Overseer's silence was heavy. "Perhaps your species thrives on chaos," he said finally. "We shall see if it is a strength or a weakness." The turning point came as dusk fell on the colony. The Crawl launched a full-scale assault, their ships blotting out the stars as they descended. The colony erupted into chaos, workers scrambling for cover as the defenders took their positions. "Monroe, get us eyes in the sky," Ward barked over the comms. "Parker, bring those shields online now." "Working on it," Parker shouted, sweat streaming down his face as he raced to stabilize the modified shield grid. "Just need a few more seconds." The Pathfinder roared to life, its thrusters propelling it into the fray. Monroe's precise maneuvers kept the Crawl fighters off balance, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Grady, I got 3 bogeys heading your way. Hope you're ready." "Always am," Grady replied, his team laying down suppressive fire as Ramirez hurried to distribute the symbiote-enhanced filters to the colony workers. The shield grid flickered to life, just as a Crawl cruiser unleashed a devastating plasma barrage. Parker's modifications held, the energy dissipating harmlessly against the barrier. "Shields are up," Parker called, his voice triumphant. Let's see them try that again. Ward seized the opportunity, coordinating the colony's defenders with precision. Focus fire on their lead ship. If we take it out, the rest will scatter. The combined forces of humans and Concordance struck back with a ferocity that surprised even Takor. The lead crawl cruiser erupted in a ball of fire, its debris scattering across the battlefield. The remaining ships hesitated before retreating, their attack broken. As silence fell over the colony, the crew regrouped in the command center. Takor approached Ward, his crystalline form dim but steady. "You have proven resourceful," he admitted, his tone grudgingly respectful. "Perhaps your chaos has its uses." Ward inclined his head. "We're just getting started." Takor's gaze lingered on the human crew before he turned to leave. The victory was hard-earned, but Ward knew it was only the beginning. The crawl would return, stronger and angrier, and the Pathfinder would be ready. The crawl asteroid base loomed on the USS Pathfinder's forward display, a sprawling hive of jagged metal structures clinging to the surface like parasitic growths. Weapon emplacements bristled from every crevice, and swarms of fighters patrolled the surrounding space. From the bridge, Captain Nathaniel Ward studied the tactical readout, his expression as sharp and unyielding as the battlefield ahead. "We've got 30 minutes before they detect us," said Lieutenant Jack Monroe, his hands steady on the controls. "And about 5 after that before they light us up. Then we'll make those 5 minutes count," Ward replied, his voice calm but firm. "Parker, status on the cloaking array?" Commander Ethan Parker scowled at the flickering console. "It's holding together, barely. A stiff breeze could knock it offline, but it should get us close enough." "Good," Ward said. He turned to Sergeant Thomas Grady, who stood at attention near the weapons locker. "Grady, you and your team ready for insertion?" "Locked and loaded," Grady replied, patting the plasma rifle slung across his chest. "Just get us to the airlock, and we'll take care of the rest." Ward's gaze shifted to Dr. Lucas Ramirez, who stood nearby with a small case of bio-enhanced equipment. "Ramirez, you're sure about the inhibitor?" Ramirez adjusted his glasses, his expression resolute. "The symbiote extract should destabilize the crawl's biology for a few hours, long enough to give us an edge. Let's hope it works," Ward said. He straightened, his voice carrying the weight of command. "You all know what's at stake. If we don't destroy that base, they'll keep coming until there's nothing left of the system. Failure isn't an option." The crew nodded, each man bracing himself for the mission ahead. The Pathfinder glided forward, its cloaking array humming softly as it slipped through the asteroid field. On the display, the crawl base loomed larger, its defenses a daunting web of overlapping firepower. 10 clicks out," Monroe announced, dropping speed to minimum. "Parker, keep the cloak stable," Ward ordered. "Monroe, hold position once we're in range." "Grady, Ramirez, prep for launch." As the team moved to the airlock, the tension on the bridge grew palpable. Every man knew the risks. No one needed to voice them. The Pathfinder was a single ship against a fortress, and their odds of success were slim at best. The insertion pod launched silently, a matte black projectile that darted through the void like a shadow. Inside, Grady and his team sat in tense silence, their weapons primed. Ramirez checked the bioinhibitor one last time, his fingers steady despite the pounding of his heart. 2 minutes to impact," Grady murmured, his voice low. "Stay sharp." The pod slammed into the asteroid's surface with a muted thud, its magnetic clamps anchoring it in place. The hatch hissed open, and the team moved swiftly into the crawl base's outer corridors, their movements precise and disciplined. "Parker," Grady said into his comms, "we're in. Feed us the layout." Back on the Pathfinder, Parker's hands flew over the controls. "You've got 3 levels to the reactor core. First level's patrols, second's automated defenses, third's locked down tight." "Nothing's ever easy," Grady muttered. "All right, let's move." The team advanced through the dimly lit corridors, their footsteps muffled by the reinforced plating beneath them. Ramirez followed closely, his case clutched tightly as he scanned for signs of Crawl activity. The first encounter came swiftly. A patrol of Crawl soldiers rounded the corner, their insectoid forms bristling with natural armor and energy weapons. Grady signaled his team, and they opened fire in coordinated bursts. The plasma rifles cut through the Crawl ranks with brutal efficiency, but not without cost. One of Grady's men took a glancing shot, his armor sparking as he stumbled back. "Keep moving," Grady barked, hauling the injured man to his feet. "We're not stopping now." The second level was a labyrinth of turrets and laser grids, their mechanisms whirring ominously as the team approached. Ramirez stepped forward, his voice steady. "Let me handle this." He knelt by a control panel, injecting the bioinhibitor into the system. The alien technology resisted for a moment before faltering, the turrets sagging as their targeting systems overloaded. "Systems are down," Ramirez confirmed, "but we need to hurry. This won't last." Grady nodded, signaling his team to push forward. They reached the final level, where a massive blast door barred their path. Parker's voice crackled over the comms. "You've got company heading your way. I'm working on bypassing the door, but it'll take a minute." "We don't have a minute," Grady growled. He planted an explosive charge against the door, stepping back as it detonated with a deafening roar. The way ahead was clear, but so were the Crawl reinforcements converging on their position. "Ramirez, get to the core!" Grady shouted, covering the scientist as he sprinted forward. The reactor chamber was a chaotic mass of energy conduits and alien machinery, its pulsing core the heart of the Crawl base. Ramirez hurriedly deployed the remaining inhibitor, injecting it directly into the reactor's coolant lines. The core shuddered, its glow dimming as the substance began to take effect. "It's working," Ramirez called. "But we need to get out of here, now." Grady relayed the message as the team fought their way back to the pod. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, Monroe was already bringing the ship into position, his hands steady despite the chaos. "They're coming in hot," Monroe said. "We'd better be ready to catch them." The insertion pod launched just as the reactor went critical, the Crawl base erupting in a blinding explosion. The Pathfinder veered away, its shields absorbing the shockwave as debris scattered across the asteroid field. "Status?" Ward demanded. "Grady's team is aboard," Monroe confirmed, relief evident in his voice. "And the base is gone. They won't be bothering anyone anymore." Ward nodded, his expression grim but satisfied. "Good work, everyone. Let's head back to the colony." As the Pathfinder set course for the mining station, the crew gathered on the bridge, their exhaustion tempered by the glow of victory. Ward looked at each of them in turn, his voice quiet but resolute. "This was one battle," he said. "There will be others. But today, we proved that one ship, just one ship, can make a difference." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. They had won this fight, but the war was far from over. For now, though, the stars seemed a little brighter.